When President Joe Biden took office in January 2021, his administration inherited a complex and fraught relationship with China. Initially, Biden's approach highlighted a firm stance, insisting on tangible outcomes from China in various domains, including trade, technology, and human rights. This demand for concrete results was an extension of the previous administration's policies, which were marked by confrontation and significant tariffs. The Biden administration's early rhetoric suggested a continuation of a tough approach towards China, signaling a robust defense of American interests and values. This was apparent in public statements and strategic documents that emphasized competition and the need for Beijing to adhere to international norms. The administration also underscored the importance of strengthening alliances to counterbalance China's rising influence. However, over the subsequent months, a notable shift in strategy emerged. In the past year, the Biden administration has increasingly emphasized the importance of dialogue and the establishment of working groups with China. This strategic shift is predicated on the belief that sustained engagement might lead to better management of disagreements and foster areas of potential cooperation, such as climate change and global health. This approach contrasts sharply with the previous demands for immediate and tangible outcomes. The increase in dialogue includes high-level meetings between U.S. and Chinese officials, aiming to create channels for communication to mitigate conflicts and misunderstandings. For instance, engagements have covered topics from trade policies to cybersecurity, indicating a broad spectrum of interests where both nations see value in discussion. This method hopes to build a foundation for more substantial agreements in the future. Despite these efforts, the response from China has been mixed, with some Chinese officials showing willingness to engage, while others remain skeptical about the intentions behind the U.S.'s renewed focus on dialogue. This has led to questions about the effectiveness of this approach, particularly in areas where China has not shown a reciprocal interest in making concessions or in transparency. The Biden administration's pivot towards increased dialogue and engagement with China is driven by several strategic considerations. Firstly, the complex nature of U.S.-China relations requires a multifaceted approach that goes beyond mere confrontation. By incorporating dialogue, the U.S. aims to build a more nuanced relationship that can better accommodate both cooperation and competition. This strategic recalibration also reflects a recognition of the limits of a purely confrontational approach. Previous strategies that focused heavily on demanding immediate results did not always yield the desired outcomes and sometimes escalated tensions unnecessarily. Engaging China in a constructive dialogue is seen as a way to stabilize the relationship and explore potential areas of mutual interest. Moreover, the shift acknowledges the global context in which these relations exist. In a world facing numerous challenges such as climate change, pandemics, and global economic instability, cooperation between the world's two largest economies could be crucial. Therefore, dialogue is not just a tool for bilateral benefits, but also a necessary strategy for addressing broader global issues effectively. The economic dimension of U.S.-China relations remains one of the most contentious. Under Biden, while there is a continued emphasis on protecting American economic interests, there is also a notable shift towards addressing these issues through multilateral frameworks and diplomatic negotiations, rather than unilateral tariffs and sanctions. This approach aims to engage China on economic practices that concern the U.S. and its allies, such as intellectual property theft and unfair trade practices. In response to these challenges, the U.S. has sought to strengthen its technological and manufacturing bases to compete more effectively with China. Initiatives like the CHIPS Act, which aims to bolster domestic semiconductor production, are examples of this strategy. This not only addresses economic competition, but also has significant national security implications, given the vital role of semiconductors in modern technology. Furthermore, the Biden administration has been working with international partners to present a unified front in trade negotiations with China. By doing so, it leverages collective economic weight against China, aiming to create a more balanced and fair international trade environment. This multilateral approach is hoped to pressure China into adhering to international economic rules and norms. Section 5. Strategic rivalry, military and technological concerns. The military and technological rivalry between the US and China is a critical aspect of their strategic competition. Under the Biden administration, there has been a clear recognition of the need to maintain a technological edge and a strong military presence in the Asia-Pacific region. This includes investments in cutting-edge technologies such as artificial intelligence and quantum computing, which are seen as pivotal in the next generation of military and economic competition. The US has also been actively working to ensure the security of its allies in the region, strengthening military alliances with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. These alliances are not only meant to act as a counterbalance to China's military ambitions, but also as a means of sharing intelligence and coordinating strategies on defense matters. This collective security approach is critical in maintaining regional stability. Moreover, the US continues to express concerns over China's military activities in the South China Sea and its approach to Taiwan, which remain significant points of contention. The Biden administration has reiterated its commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, which directly challenges China's aggressive postures in these areas. This stance underscores the ongoing strategic rivalry that defines much of the US-China relationship. Section 6. Human rights and ideological disputes. Human rights issues continue to be a significant area of ideological dispute between the US and China. The Biden administration has been vocal about China's human rights record, particularly concerning the treatment of ethnic minorities such as the Uyghurs in Xinjiang and the suppression of democratic freedoms in Hong Kong. These issues are not just bilateral, but resonate globally, affecting international perception and policy. In addressing these concerns, the US has utilized a combination of public condemnation and sanctions against Chinese officials and entities believed to be involved in human rights abuses. This approach aims to pressure the Chinese government while also aligning with international human rights advocacy groups and like-minded nations to amplify the call for change. Additionally, ideological disputes extend into the realms of technology and media, where the US has accused China of using technology for surveillance and censorship, both domestically and internationally. This clash of ideologies represents a fundamental difference in governance and values, making it a persistent area of conflict in US-China relations. The Biden administration has placed a significant emphasis on diplomatic efforts and multilateral engagement as tools to manage and possibly improve relations with China. This strategy includes rejoining international agreements and organizations from which the US had previously withdrawn, such as the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization, where cooperation with China is essential. These multilateral platforms provide a venue for continuous dialogue and cooperation on global issues that affect both countries and the world at large. The administration believes that engaging China within these frameworks can lead to more constructive outcomes compared to bilateral confrontations. This is evident in the US's approach to climate change negotiations, where both nations have mutual interests in combating environmental degradation. Moreover, the US has been proactive in revitalizing alliances and forming new partnerships around the world, particularly with nations that share concerns about China's growing power and influence. These alliances are not solely military or economic, but also involve cultural and educational exchanges, which help to solidify long-term relationships and present a united front in diplomatic engagements with China. The role of US allies in shaping the dynamics of US-China relations cannot be overstated. By strengthening alliances, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, the Biden administration aims to create a more robust network of countries that can collectively respond to China's strategic moves. This includes deepening defense ties, enhancing economic cooperation, and coordinating on technology and cybersecurity issues. Allies such as Australia, Japan, and the European Union play crucial roles in this strategy. For instance, the Quad Security Dialogue, involving the US, Australia, India, and Japan, focuses on issues like maritime security and supply chain resilience, which are vital for countering China's influence. These collaborative efforts ensure a more comprehensive approach to dealing with China, leveraging the collective capabilities and influence of multiple nations. Additionally, the involvement of European allies through forums like NATO and the G7 expands the geographical scope of this strategy, integrating concerns about China into broader discussions of international security and economic stability. This global network of alliances is instrumental in amplifying the impact of U.S. policies towards China, providing a multilateral dimension that complements bilateral efforts. The evolving U.S.-China relations under the Biden administration have significant implications for global politics. As the two largest economies and influential global actors, the dynamics of their relationship shape international economic policies, security strategies, and diplomatic engagements. The shift towards more dialogue and engagement, while maintaining a stance on critical issues, reflects an attempt to stabilize what has been a highly volatile relationship. This approach has the potential to lead to more predictable international markets, which benefit global economic stability. It also affects how global challenges like climate change and pandemics are addressed, as cooperation or conflict between the U.S. and China can influence the effectiveness of global responses to these crises. Their relationship sets a tone for international norms and behaviors, particularly regarding human rights and technology use. Furthermore, the emphasis on multilateralism and strengthening alliances under Biden suggests a shift towards a more collaborative and inclusive international order. This could lead to a more balanced global power structure, reducing the risks associated with a bipolar world dominated solely by the U.S. and China. However, the success of this strategy is contingent on the willingness of both nations to engage constructively and the international community's response to these efforts. As the Biden administration continues to navigate the complexities of U.S.-China relations, the strategic shift from demanding tangible outcomes to fostering increased dialogue and engagement marks a significant recalibration of U.S. foreign policy. This nuanced approach aims to create a more stable and predictable framework for managing one of the world's most critical bilateral relationships, balancing competition with cooperation. The effectiveness of this strategy will ultimately depend on China's response and the ability of the U.S. to maintain cohesion among its allies. It will also be influenced by domestic factors within both the U.S. and China, including political pressures and economic priorities. As such, the future of U.S.-China relations remains uncertain, but the current strategy offers a pathway that could potentially lead to more sustainable and constructive interaction between the two powers. In conclusion, while challenges remain, the strategic shift under the Biden administration provides a framework for potentially more effective engagement with China. By balancing firmness on critical issues with openness to dialogue, the U.S. is navigating the intricate dance of diplomacy with a formidable and complex counterpart. The coming years will reveal whether this approach can lead to a more harmonious and stable international order, or if adjustments will be necessary to address new realities.